Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching through the massive viewport as another planet died. The blue-green world that had once teemed with life now glowed orange and red, its surface cracking like an egg as the planet-killer weapons did their work. "Planetary sterilization complete, Commander," reported Sub-Commander Vexthal, her forearms dancing across the control matrix with practiced efficiency. "Estimated casualties, 4 billion sentients." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The hegemony's conquest of the Kepler sector was proceeding exactly as planned. In 3 months, they had claimed 17 star systems. 38 worlds had surrendered without firing a shot. 12 had chosen to fight. None had survived their defiance. "Time to the next target?" Zethkar asked, his voice a low rumble that carried across the bridge. The other officers, a mix of insectoid Vexthari like himself and reptilian Skarthen shock troops, all turned their attention to the tactical display. 6 hours to the Sol System, Commander," came the reply, from the navigation pit. The humans' home system. A ripple of excitement passed through the bridge crew. Humans. The strange mammals had been sending out exploratory vessels for decades, establishing small colonies, making contact with various species. They were primitive by hegemony standards, still using chemical rockets for most of their space travel, still fighting wars on their homeworld, still clinging to individual nations instead of species unity. They would be another easy conquest. Perhaps they would even surrender without a fight like the Altarians had. "Sir," came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Sol system. It's in our language." Zethkar's compound eyes swiveled toward the communications officer. "Put it through." The main display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The creature was pale pink, with short brown hair and 2 small eyes set close together in its tiny skull. It wore some kind of blue uniform with insignia that meant nothing to the hegemony. "My name is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the human said, its voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. "We know who you are, and we know what you've done to the other worlds in this sector." Zethkar allowed himself what passed for a smile among his species, a widening of his mandibles that showed his razor-sharp teeth. "Human, I am Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. You will surrender your system immediately or no." The simple word cut through Zethkar's speech like a blade. On the screen, the human's face remained completely calm. "Did you not understand me, mammal?" Zethkar's voice rose. "We have destroyed 38 worlds. Your pathetic species numbers less than 10 billion. We can sterilize your entire system with a single—" "I understood you perfectly, Commander." Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. "But you seem to misunderstand something important. This is where your expansion stops." Laughter echoed across the hegemony bridge. Several officers chittered with amusement. Even Zethkar couldn't help but click his mandibles. "Human, our fleet consists of 2,000 warships. Each vessel can crack a planet. What could you possibly—" "Check your sensors, Commander." Something in the human's tone made Zethkar pause. He gestured to his tactical officer. "Sir?" The officer's voice was uncertain. "I'm reading a single contact at the edge of the system. 1 ship." "1 ship?" Zethkar turned back to the screen. "Human, if this is some kind of— Her name is the Defiance," Admiral Chen said quietly. "And she's not moving." The tactical display updated, showing the vast hegemony fleet, 2,000 ships strong, stretching across several light minutes of space, approaching the inner system. And there, directly in their path, was a single human vessel. "It's blocking our approach vector to the human homeworld," reported the tactical officer. "Sir, it's just sitting there." Zethkar stared at the display. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything so absurd. A single ship defying a fleet that had conquered half the galaxy. "Move it aside," he ordered. "Sir, send a squadron forward. Destroy that ship. Let the humans watch their brave defenders die." But even as he gave the order, something nagged at him. The human admiral's face on the screen showed no fear, no desperation. She looked like someone who knew something he didn't. And in the depths of space, the human warship Defiance waited, silent and still, directly in the path of the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen. What were the humans hiding? And why did a single ship think it could stop an entire fleet? Chapter 2. The Weight of Defiance. The Defiance hung in space like a sleeping giant. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the warship's command center, watching the tactical display as 2,000 enemy contacts crept closer. His crew of 300 worked quietly at their stations, their faces showing the calm determination that came from months of preparation. Distance to the hegemony fleet? Webb asked. 40 million kilometers and closing, sir, replied Lieutenant Commander Torres from the navigation station. At their current speed, first contact in approximately 6 hours. Webb nodded. 6 hours. He'd been preparing for this moment for 2 years, ever since the first reports of the hegemony's expansion had reached Earth. 2 years since the Defense Council had approved the most classified, most desperate project in human history. Status of the Titan drive, Doctor? Dr. Emily Vasquez looked up from her console, her face pale but determined. All systems green, Captain. The containment field is stable, power levels are nominal. The weapon is ready. Webb studied the woman, who had created humanity's last hope. Emily was young for such responsibility, barely 35, but she was the most brilliant physicist Earth had ever produced. She was also the only person who truly understood what they were about to unleash. Sir, came a voice from communications. The hegemony commander is hailing us directly. Put him through. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the alien flagship. The creature that appeared was clearly the leader, larger than the others with more elaborate markings on his chitinous armor. His compound eyes fixed on Webb with unconcealed contempt. Human captain, the alien said, his voice a grating buzz through the translators. I am Commander Zethkar. Your ship will... Move aside immediately or I will have it destroyed. Webb clasped his hands behind his back, the gesture conveying a calm he didn't entirely feel. I'm afraid I can't do that, Commander. This is as far as you go. As far as I go? Zethkar's mandibles widened in what might have been amusement. Captain, do you understand what you face? My fleet has conquered 12 sectors. We have sterilized 50 worlds. Your single ship cannot possibly... You've killed over 200 billion sentient beings. Webb interrupted, his voice hard. Entire civilizations, wiped out because they wouldn't kneel to your empire. Children, families, artists, scientists. Billions of unique lives gone forever. The alien commander leaned forward. Spare me your mammalian sentiment, human. Evolution is conquest. The strong consume the weak. This is the natural order. No, Webb said quietly. That's just what predators tell themselves to justify murder. Zethkar's laugh was like grinding metal. Bold words from a species that still wars against itself. We have monitored your pathetic world, human. You fight each other over resources, territory, ideology. You are divided, weak, chaotic. What could you possibly do against the might of the hegemony? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across both bridges. Commander, there's something you don't understand about humans. Yes, we fight each other. Yes, we disagree about almost everything. We've been doing it for thousands of years. He paused. But when something threatens our children, our families, our future, we stop fighting each other and start fighting together. On the screen, Zethkar's expression grew impatient. Pretty speeches will not. Every nation on Earth contributed to this ship, Webb continued. American steel, Chinese electronics, Russian nuclear technology, Japanese precision manufacturing, German engineering, Indian software, African rare earth elements. Former enemies working side by side because some things are more important than old grudges. One ship against 2,000. Zethkar snarled. Your unity is admirable, human, but ultimately meaningless. Webb smiled then, a cold expression that made several of the alien officers step back from their screens. Commander, you're absolutely right. One ship can't stop your fleet. His smile widened. But one ship can carry a very big gun. The alien commander's eyes narrowed. What are you? Dr. Vasquez, Webb said calmly, begin the startup sequence. Deep in the Defiance's core, machinery that pushed the boundaries of physics hummed to life. The ship's lights dimmed as enormous amounts of power flowed into the device that Emily Vasquez had spent 5 years designing. On the Hegemony flagship, alarms began to sound. Sir! The tactical officer's voice was sharp with alarm. The human ship's energy readings are spiking. Power output is... This can't be right. What are the readings? Zethkar demanded. Sir, they're showing energy levels equivalent to a small star. Silence fell on both bridges. In that silence, Captain Webb spoke one final time. Commander, you wanted to know what one ship could do against your fleet. You're about to find out. How could a single human vessel generate the power of a star? And what weapon could possibly require such massive energy? Chapter 3. The Titans. Roar Space itself began to bend around the Defiance. In the warship's engineering section, Dr. Emily Vasquez watched displays that showed readings no human had ever seen before. The Titan drive's containment field held steady, but the energies it controlled were beyond imagination. Compressed matter and antimatter, guided by gravitic fields that twisted the fabric of reality. Containment field at 96%. Stability, reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez. Core temperature nominal. Gravitic resonance locked. Emily nodded, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. Captain, we're at optimal firing parameters. The weapon is ready. On the bridge, Captain Webb studied the tactical display. The Hegemony fleet had spread out across a vast area of space, their formation designed to overwhelm any defensive force through sheer numbers. 2,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. But they had made one critical error. They had gathered in the same system. Target confirmed, reported the weapons officer. All enemy vessels within range. Webb took a deep breath. Dr. Vasquez, what exactly are we about to do? Emily's voice carried through the ship's comm system, calm and professional despite the circumstances. The Titan drive creates a controlled gravitational collapse, Captain. Think of it as a miniature black hole, but one we can direct and shape. The gravitational waves it generates will propagate at light speed in all directions. And what will those waves do to the Hegemony fleet? They'll tear it apart at the atomic level, sir, across the void. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Commander Zethkar watched his sensor displays with growing unease. The human ship's energy output continued to climb, far beyond anything his science officers had thought possible for such a primitive species. Analysis report, he ordered. Sir, came the nervous reply from his lead scientist. Our models indicate the humans have somehow weaponized gravitational forces. The energy signatures suggest controlled spatial distortion on a massive scale. Zethkar's compound eyes widened. That's impossible. Gravitational manipulation requires technology centuries beyond anything these mammals possess. Nevertheless, sir, the readings are unmistakable. They've built some kind of gravity weapon. A chill ran through the Hegemony commander. The finest minds of his species had been working on gravitational control for millennia without success. How could these primitive creatures have achieved what the Hegemony could not? Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked with strain. The gravitational distortion is expanding. It's reaching critical mass. On the Defiance, alarms sounded as the ship's hull began to groan under the stress of containing such massive forces. The artificial gravity fluctuated, sending crew members gripping their stations. Hull stress at 80% of tolerance, reported the chief engineer. The containment field is holding, but we're pushing the ship beyond its design limits. Captain Webb felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet. The Defiance had been built to withstand almost anything, but no ship had ever been designed to carry a weapon like this. Dr. Vasquez, if we fire this thing, will the ship survive? A pause. Unknown, Captain. The theoretical models suggest we should be fine. But this is the first time anyone has attempted anything like this. Webb looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, but not one of them had asked to abandon the mission. They knew what was at stake. Sir, came a voice from communications. The hegemony. Commander is transmitting again. Webb nodded. Put him through. Zethkar's image appeared on screen, but the alien's composure had cracked. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. Human captain, what are you doing? Our sensors indicate you are creating a gravitational anomaly that could destabilize this entire system. That's the idea, Commander. You're insane. You'll destroy yourselves along with us. Webb's expression remained calm. Maybe, but that's better than letting you murder another world. This is madness. Your species will gain nothing by this. Wrong again, Commander. Webb leaned forward. We'll gain something very important. We'll gain time. The alien commander's confusion was visible. Time for what? Time for the rest of the galaxy to see what you really are. Time for them to prepare. Time for them to unite against you. Webb's voice grew hard. You've conquered world after world because you picked them off one by one. But now everyone will know that the hegemony can be stopped, that they can be beaten. With one ship? Zethkar's voice was incredulous. With one ship that was willing to stand in your way. The gravitational readings spiked again. On both ships, alarms screamed warnings about the forces building in the space between them. Captain, Dr. Vasquez's voice was tight with concentration. We're approaching the point of no return. If we fire now, there's no stopping it. Webb looked one last time at the display showing Earth. A small blue dot, barely visible from this distance but containing everyone and everything his species had ever known. Dr. Vasquez, he said quietly, fire the Titan drive. Deep in the Defiance's core, containment fields collapsed in a carefully controlled sequence. Matter and antimatter met in proportions calculated to the last particle. And for one brief moment, the ship held a piece of the universe's birth, raw creation and destruction, bound together by human will and ingenuity. The weapon fired. Space screamed. The gravitational weapon was unleashed, but would it work as designed? And could the human ship survive the forces it had just released? Chapter 4. When giants fall, reality warped. The gravitational wave erupted from the Defiance, like a tsunami of twisted space-time, racing outward at the speed of light. Stars seemed to bend and shift as the wave passed, their light stretched and compressed by the gravitational distortion. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Commander Zethkar had perhaps 3 seconds to comprehend what was happening before the wave reached his flagship. Emergency power to structural, he began, but his words were cut off as the wave struck. The massive Hegemony Warship, a vessel 3 kilometers long and capable of cracking planets, crumpled like paper. Its hull, designed to withstand the void of space and the fury of conventional weapons, couldn't resist the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Metal screamed as gravitational tides ripped the ship apart at the molecular level. Zethkar had time for one final thought as his bridge collapsed around him. How could they have built such a weapon? Across the vast expanse of space, the same scene played out 2,000 times. Ships that had conquered half the galaxy simply ceased to exist as the gravitational wave passed through them. Some exploded spectacularly as their reactors were crushed. Others simply collapsed into dense spheres of metal and flesh before disintegrating entirely. In less than a minute, the most powerful fleet in galactic history was reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Aboard the Defiance, Captain, Webb gripped his command chair as the ship bucked and rolled from the gravitational backwash. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles. The lights flickered and dimmed. Damage report, he called over the chaos. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, came the reply from damage control. We've lost main power to sections 12 through 18. Structural integrity down to 40%. But we're alive, Webb said quietly, hardly believing it himself. Sir, the tactical officer's voice was filled with awe. The Hegemony fleet is gone. All contacts have disappeared from sensors. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Webb held up a hand for silence. They weren't finished yet. Dr. Vasquez, status of the Titan drive? Emily's voice came through the comm, shaky but triumphant. The weapon performed exactly as designed, Captain. The gravitational collapse sequence was perfect. But, sir, we can never fire it again. Why not? The exotic matter matrix is completely depleted. It would take years to manufacture more, assuming we could even get the raw materials. The Titan drive is now just very expensive scrap metal. Webb nodded. They had built a weapon that could destroy entire fleets, but only once. It had been enough. Communications. Open a channel to Earth. The main screen flickered, showing the familiar blue-green marble of humanity's homeworld. Admiral Chen's face appeared, along with the faces of dozens of other world leaders gathered in the Defense Council chambers. Captain Webb, Admiral Chen's voice was tight with emotion. Report. Mission accomplished, Admiral. The Hegemony Third Fleet has been destroyed. All 2,000 ships. Silence fell in the council chambers. Then, slowly, the sound of applause began to build until it filled the room. Casualties? Asked President Martinez of the Americas Federation. We lost 43 crew members, sir. The ship took heavy damage, but she'll make it home. Captain, Admiral Chen leaned forward. You've just changed the course of Galactic history. The Hegemony thought they were unstoppable. Now the entire galaxy will know they can be beaten. Webb looked around his battered bridge at his exhausted crew. It wasn't just us, Admiral. This victory belongs to every person who worked on this project, every nation that contributed resources, every human who believed we could stand against the dark. Sir, came a voice from the communication station, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. It seems word of the Hegemony's defeat is spreading quickly. Put it through. The screen split into multiple segments, showing faces of various alien species, some familiar from previous contact, others completely unknown. All were speaking in different languages, but the translation software worked overtime to convert their words. Humans have stopped the Hegemony. Impossible, they destroyed an entire fleet. Perhaps there is hope after all. We must contact these humans immediately. Admiral Chen smiled. Captain, it looks like humanity just made a lot of new friends. But even as celebrations began on Earth and messages poured in from across the galaxy, Webb found himself thinking about the larger implications. The Hegemony Third Fleet was gone, but it was only one of many. The empire they had just bloodied would not forgive this humiliation. Admiral, he said quietly, this isn't over. We've won a battle, but the war is just beginning. I know, Captain, but now we won't be fighting alone. Webb looked out at the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest threat, then at the small blue dot that was home. His species had just announced themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The Hegemony would return with even greater force, but would humanity be ready? And how would the galaxy respond to the species that had done the impossible? Epilogue. Ripples across the galaxy. 6 months later. The Galactic Council met for the first time in 300 years. Representative Kelthus of the Altarian Republic looked around the vast assembly hall as delegates from 47 different species took their seats. The hall hadn't seen such attendance since the days before the Hegemony's expansion, when hope still existed for peaceful coexistence among the stars. Now that hope had been reborn by the most unlikely of species. The Council recognizes Ambassador Sarah Chen of the Human Systems Alliance, announced the speaker, an ancient being whose species had been the first to achieve interstellar travel. Admiral Chen, now Ambassador Chen, rose from her seat in the human delegation area. Behind her sat representatives from Earth's various nations, united for the first time in their species' history, under a single banner. Honored delegates, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. 6 months ago, the Hegemony seemed unstoppable. They had conquered 12 sectors, destroyed hundreds of worlds, enslaved or exterminated countless civilizations. They called it the natural order, the strong consuming the weak. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, Every species present had lost worlds to the hegemony's expansion. But on that day in the Sol system, something changed. Not because humans are stronger than anyone else, or smarter, or braver. We're not. We're just a young species that got lucky, with a brilliant scientist and a desperate idea. Chen paused, looking around the assembled delegates. What changed was that someone finally said no. Someone finally stood up and proved that the hegemony could bleed, could be beaten, could be stopped. And once that was proven, everything else became possible. The display behind her lit up, showing a galactic map marked with colored zones. In the past 6 months, 17 former hegemony worlds have declared independence. The 2nd and 5th fleets have been recalled to defend core territories. 3 major uprisings are in progress in occupied sectors. The hegemony's expansion has not just stopped, it's reversing. Cheers erupted from several delegations, but Chen held up a hand for silence. But we cannot be complacent. The hegemony still controls vast territories and maintains enormous military forces. They will not accept these defeats quietly. Already we've detected massive fleet buildups in the core systems. They're preparing for a counterattack that will make their previous campaigns look small. The assembly hall grew quiet again. That's why we're here. That's why this council has reformed. Not to celebrate our victories, but to prepare for the battles to come. Separately, we are weak. Together, we are strong. The hegemony expanded by conquering divided worlds one at a time. But they've never faced a united galaxy. Chen activated another display, this one showing technical specifications. Humanity is prepared to share our gravitational weapons technology with any species willing to join the alliance. We cannot build enough ships ourselves to stop the hegemony, but together, we can create a fleet they cannot ignore. Representative Forthak of the crystalline hierarchies stood, his silicon-based form gleaming under the chamber lights. Ambassador Chen, your species' weapon is impressive, but it destroyed itself in the firing. How do you propose to mass-produce such devices? Doctor. Emily Vasquez rose from the human delegation. Honored representative, the Titan drive was a prototype designed for a single use. But we've been working on smaller, more efficient versions. The Mark II gravitational cannon can be mounted on a standard battleship and fired multiple times. We've already built 12 of them. Excited chatter filled the hall. The idea of a weapon that could threaten hegemony fleets was revolutionary. Furthermore, Vasquez continued, we're willing to establish joint research facilities with any species that wishes to participate. Human innovation combined with your various technologies could create weapons and defenses we've never imagined. The speaker called for order. The council will now hear proposals for formal alliance structure. For the next several hours, delegates debated, argued, and negotiated. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves sitting at the same table, united by a common threat. Trade agreements were drafted, technology sharing protocols established, joint military commands proposed. As the session concluded, Ambassador Chen found herself approached by Representative Kelthis. Ambassador, the Altarian said, my people owe yours a great debt. When the hegemony came to our world, we surrendered without firing a shot. We thought resistance was hopeless. You were trying to protect your people, Chen replied. There's no shame in that. Perhaps. But watching your Captain Webb face down 2,000 ships with only one, it reminded us that sometimes the most hopeless gestures are the most important ones. The alien's expression grew thoughtful. Tell me, do you think your species would have done the same thing if Earth had been alone? If there were no other civilizations to save? Chen considered the question. I think we would have fought regardless. Not because we're particularly noble, but because it's who we are. Humans have a saying, you can't conquer a people who refuse to be conquered. And now you've taught that lesson to the entire galaxy. As delegates began to file out of the assembly hall, Chen looked up at the star map still glowing on the main display. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was preparing its response. New fleets were being built, new weapons developed, new strategies planned. But for the first time in centuries, they would face a united galaxy. Species that had never cooperated were now sharing technology. Worlds that had never spoken were now planning joint operations. The humans had lit a spark in the Sol system 6 months ago. Now that spark was becoming a flame that would spread across the galaxy. And in the depths of space, construction began on ships that carried weapons born from the marriage of human ingenuity and alien expertise. The galaxy was preparing for war, not the one-sided slaughter the hegemony was used to, but a real war between equals. The next time the hegemony expanded, they would find not scattered, frightened worlds, but a united front of species who had learned a simple lesson. Sometimes, one ship is enough to change everything. Sometimes the smallest light can drive back the deepest darkness, and sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply refuse to move out of the way. The war for the galaxy's future was about to begin. The end.